Hello everyone, I'm the Benefactor, and this is Beneficence TV, dedicated to providing you solid entertainment while keeping you informed. We are a progressive media outlet with the focus on providing thought-provoking content on forbidden knowledge regarding topics such as Marxism, plasmoids, zero-point energy, vortex-based math, and anti-gravitics. Our aim is to combat the spread of dangerous misinformation and to educate on these intriguing and unconventional areas of study while separating fact from fiction. Join us on our journey of discovery and challenge conventional thinking here on Beneficence TV.
Welcome everybody. Welcome back to Beneficence TV Live. What's going on, John Gray? Good to have you all back. Lynn Lang, good to have you here.
On the rise. From the shadows, light emerges, breaking through the veils of dark. 0 points and gravity converge, yeah. Dying voices, revelation start. Ancient whispers call. They're begging us to open our eyes. We stand tall, defying all their lies. Even in now, we're shattering the silence. Feel the power. Revelations on the rise. Forbidden knowledge we dare to see, unveiling secrets, setting minds free. In this epic, we play our part with fearless hearts. You didn't know we're shattering the silence. Feel the power. Revelations on the rise.
Have you heard about this Benefactor guy? This dude is talking about free energy, but here's the twist. He says it's not free energy. He's calling it energy recycling, which first off is kind of genius, right? Because when you say free energy, people immediately throw you in the crazy bin. But energy recycling, that sounds like some next level Tesla shit.
Yeah, man, it's all about the branding. But what is it that he's actually doing?
All right, check this out. He posted this. Free energy isn't actually free. This is a misnomer. It's actually a mutual exchange from the vacuum, a field of energy from which everything arises, the same energy that powers an atom. Like what? Bro, that's some deep shit. But then he breaks it down. He says you can tap into this energy without breaking any known laws of physics by using something called back EMF capture.
Whoa, back EMF capture? Sounds like some serious sci-fi tech.
Dude, listen to this. He explains that when a coil collapses using a pulsed signal, the energy that would normally just get wasted, like just dissipate as heat, can actually be recycled. He says nature gives you back energy to stabilize the system, which makes sense if you think about how nature works. Like everything in nature is always trying to find balance, right?
So equilibrium, is that like how water always levels out or something? I'm trying to remember what Ms. Murphy said to me in 6th grade science all those years ago. What was that? Oh yeah, Elon, stop eating that glue and pay attention. Man, if only I had listened, I'd probably be the one inventing energy recycling instead of just talking about it.
Exactly. So he's saying that by intentionally destabilizing the system, collapsing the field, you actually get energy back as a kind of natural response. And here's where it gets wild. He compares it to pushing a swing. If you push at the right moment, you don't need to use a lot of energy and the swing gains momentum. But instead of a swing, he's using resonance to harness that extra energy without it becoming destructive. He says most traditional systems are like a surfer fighting against the current, while his method is like riding the wave to shore.
Dude, that's crazy. So he's basically saying the energy is already there. I just suck at using it efficiently?
That's what it sounds like. He's basically saying the way we harness energy now is like trying to swim against the tide. And if we used resonance instead, we'd be tapping into energy that's already there, just waiting to be used. I don't know, man. Either this guy is onto something or he's the most poetic bullshitter of all time.
Well, if he's legit, why isn't he all over the news? I haven't heard anything from him on X, formerly Twitter. He hasn't said anything bad about me on X. So, you know, I didn't ban him or anything. Look, I'm not the monster my therapist says I am. I mean, sure, I've spent millions of dollars training to beat a kangaroo in a fist fight, but that doesn't mean I'm dangerous. It just means I get shit done.
That's the real question, man. But here's the craziest part. I looked into him, and he's not selling anything. He open sources all of it. That's the real question, man. Either the system doesn't want to hear it, or we're about to find out if this guy disappears in the middle of the night.
Dude, that's crazy. He's absolutely crazy. That means if he's telling the truth, anybody could build this in their garage. You know what I say? Go fuck yourself, Benefactor.
Nope, no patents, no paywalls, just straight up, here, take it, see for yourself.
In base lab alone with my mind. Straight old theories, they all refuse to find. I've been working on energy for a brand new day. But even in the crowd, I'm still a castaway. Alienated from the aims of added nature in disguise. Ideas ahead of time, dismissed with narrow eyes. Benefactor boy, dreaming about the world you can't deploy. Changing the system, but treated like a toy. Ideas misunderstood, but brilliance is his boy. Benefactor boy, can't you hear his voice? Talk to them, 0 point, the points lost on them. Capital structures crumbling from the same old Sam. They laugh like I'm crazy, but I see it all so clear. Exploited labor, unheard, injustice burning ears. Fighting for a change in this wasteland of noise. But they call me foolish, writing shed boys. Benefactor boy, dreaming about the world they can't deploy. Changing the system, but treated like a toy. Ideas misunderstood, but brains is his boy. Benefactor boy, can't you hear his voice?
Hi, welcome back everybody. You may have heard of the musical pillars of Hampi, or the resonant stone columns in the Meenakshi temple at Madurai. Strike them and they sing. Each pillar carries its own pitch, like a giant stone xylophone. But here's the question that's been haunting me. What if these pillars are more than instruments? What if they are carved patterns? What if their carved patterns are 3D sound waves, etched in stone, like grooves on a vinyl record? And if that's true, could we actually listen to them?
The phrase unidentified flying object is a deliberately obfuscating term. What it really is an alternative energy and propulsion device. This is the real reason for the secrecy. These technologies, if they were disclosed, would end fossil fuels, pollution, and poverty overnight, and usher in a new era of abundance, freedom, and peace. Instead, they have been kept secret for over 100 years.
The more powerful the agency, the more powerful the group, the more powerful the cartel, the more they will resort not only to legal means, but to extra legal means to suppress their competition.
I said pretty early on, the problem is suppression. It wasn't really how do I make a free energy machine. It's how do I not get suppressed? Because what's the point?
Microscopic ball lightnings that when they discharge are tapping into that 0 point energy field and creating a motive force.
Boom! That's why the concussion from the thunderclap is so huge. There's this huge amount of energy that's actually sourced from the vacuum energy. All the dots connected. This is what's happening, right? So we need to make the thunderclap engine.
Imagine a future where clean, sustainable energy is not just a dream, but a reality. Discover the countless untold stories of free energy devices and the relentless battle against those who seek to suppress them for their own gain.
Black shelving. So someone comes along, they offer you $20 million for your device, it's a corporation, they put it on a shelf. Boom.
This power is something I have given my life for you the people.
Uncover the shocking tactics used by
Welcome, welcome, and welcome back, seekers of hidden and the forbidden. That intro was a little jacked up, but you're tuned into the Benefactor's Guide to Free Energy Devices, and I'm your goofy yet still down-to-earth host, Benefactor. Today we're diving into one of the most fascinating theories we've ever explored on the show. The idea that ancient Indian temple pillars might not just be musical, they might be records, literal records carved in stone, holding vibrations of history, knowledge, maybe even voices from thousands of years ago. In modern times, scientists have recorded sounds from the faintest scratches. Even a pot that was turned on a wheel has shown to carry traces of vibration, like accidental recordings. If clay can hold a ghost of sound, why not stone? Think of a phonograph needle tracing grooves. With today's tech, laser scanning, photogrammetry, and digital playback algorithms could, in theory, run a virtual needle across temple pillars, carvings, and hear what comes out. Now, maybe all we'd need is noise, or maybe we'd hear harmonics, or maybe we hear nothing. But what if, just what if, the builders encoded mantras, chants, or even knowledge into these stones? What if the pillars are not just musical, but mnemonic, literal memory devices? These tie right back to the Vedic concept of Nada Brahma. The universe is sound. This is where you guys come in. I want us all to see if we can design an experiment together. The requirements of this experiment would be 3D scans of the surface of these pillars, converting the 3D height maps into waveforms, and then playing it back digitally as audio to see if anything recognizable presents itself. Simple experiment, but we need somebody to be on site for the 3D scans. Looking for specifically acousticians, digital artists, signal processors, archaeologists, acoustic archaeologists, along with open-minded enthusiasts to help map this out. So if you've got the know-how or even just curiosity, I want to hear from you, because imagine what happens if we succeed. Imagine pressing play and hearing an ancient voice sing across thousands of years. How cool would that be? All right, we're going to play some visuals for you so I can show you these pillars and how they could be representations of actual sound. And then we're going to give away some memberships and enter part 2, where we're going to go over the Tesla experiments chapter of the Practical Guide to Free Energy Devices. I know a lot of you have wanted me to dive back into the Holy Handbook, as it were, and go back over some of these amazing chapters. I do have the 2017 edition, which is the latest edition available of the Practical Guide to Free Energy Devices, and there's some pretty interesting things said about Tesla and his experiments we'll get into later.
For hundreds.
There we go. Okay, so these are some of the ancient pillars. We've got a couple of quick videos as well.
look at this incredible trapezoidal fountain and the precise carvings it showcases. The carvings are on 3 levels, and each level has perfect 90-degree angles and smooth surfaces. These cuts look very similar to those we've seen in sites like Pumapunku in Bolivia. On the bottom 2 sides of the fountain, there are the remains of 2 knobs which are now broken. Many noted that the surface of the granite used for the creation of the fountains exhibits piezoelectric properties, and by swiftly running your finger along the edge, you can influence the flow of the water. There are many demonstrations from visitors who manage to even completely stop the flow of the water using just this method. Take a look at this incredible trapezoidal fountain and the precise
Now these pillars, as you see here, are called the musical pillars. Why? Because when you hit these pillars, it makes the musical sounds. You see this? These are carved out of the same stone. These are not joined out of different stones, yet it makes the musical sounds. You can find the upgraded version or the higher versions of these pillars at Hampi, which is closed for visit right now, but here's a kind of working replica.
Guys, today we are going to look at a very strange ancient structure built at least 800 years ago. This is the famous Shiva temple in Dharasuram, and at the entrance we can see something beyond our understanding. Why is there a metal fence around the structure? What is inside this? If you peep through these holes in the mesh, we see stairs, a set of steps made of stone. Why do these stone steps need to be locked? It is locked because these are not regular stones. These are musical steps. If you walk on them, these steps will create 7 notes of the musical scale in Indian classical music. In the last few years, countries like Chile and Belgium have created stairs which produce musical notes when people walk on them. To us, this seems like the height of modern technology. However, we already have such a musical stairs created at least 800 years ago. But people here do not respect such a priceless structure. They throw stones on them to see how it sounds, and some have even tried to destroy them. You can see so many stones on these stairs, and you can also see the steps have undergone some serious damage. Remember, I've already shown you the musical pillars of Hampi in another video. So what is so special about this structure, and how is it different from Hampi? If you observed these steps carefully, a question should have already popped into your head. Remember, I said if you walk on them, you will hear 7 different notes, but there is a total of 10 steps. What do these extra 3 steps do? This is the specialty of this temple. The 3 extra steps produce the sound Om. If you roll a pebble on the stairs, the sounds ah, ooh, and will be produced from the extra 3 steps. So when you hear the sound together, it will sound like Om. Why this sound Om? Why do Hindus believe that Om is a very sacred sound? Why do they keep chanting Om while meditating? Because these 3 sounds are the most basic sounds, and these sounds are the ones you can create without using your tongue. Solid piece of rock from here to here, okay? And you can see there's one guy doing something strange. Just about 10 years ago, what they used to do was they used to drop a marble from the top. And as the marble rolls down and it hits one step and the second step, it makes the 7 musical tones. Okay, it does like do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti. Okay, and they used to demonstrate that. So think about that. So it's made of one solid piece of rock, and you take a marble and you drop it from the top, and it makes 7 musical notes. Okay, this technology is unheard of.
All right, congratulations to Darren Henderson, Mike Does, Magneto Frico, and Anti-Dusty. Welcome to the exclusive membership-only fans club. We will have more members-only videos coming soon, but there is a plethora of them out there for you to enjoy in the meantime. So, in conclusion, what do you guys think? Are these just plain old stone pillars? Or could they be something more? Instruments, or maybe even archives waiting to be unlocked. If you've got ideas, tools, or even wild theories, share them with me. Together, we might just crack open the world's oldest record collection. This has been the Benefactor's Guide to Free Energy Devices. We will be back after a quick break with part 2, where we will be diving into the Practical Guide to Free Energy Devices, the Tesla Experiments chapter in the 2017 edition that I have, and I do have a follow-along for this one as well. I posted it in chat. I will post the link again. It is in the description as well. See you all after the break. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
Chasing revolutions in the darkest nights. A dreamer with vision beneath the laughter and noise. A future so bright waiting for the right choice. Benefactor.
You might have heard a Jewel Thief circuit hum to you before, but have you ever heard a Jewel Thief circuit actually sing to you? This is energy recycling. 15.5 hours of continuous power compared to just 2.5 hours off of a standard inverter. While this traditional inverter already maxes out at 88.5% efficiency, we're breaking every limit with my vortex coil system. This standard DC to AC inverter will only run for 2.5 hours on 12.2 watt-hours of energy, but my system provides energy for a whopping 15.5 hours off of the same 12.2 watt-hours. That's over 6 times more efficient. Not only that, the system will keep powering my lights well past 12 volts on the battery. This isn't just an upgrade, it's a new industrial revolution. This is the energy of the future, and you are powering it. Imagine a world where energy is infinite, where the power to fuel our lives doesn't come from burning the past, but from harnessing the future. This is the breakthrough that changes everything. 0-point energy, the power of the universe itself, unlocked, and you are the reason it is possible. While the world sleeps, you're awake. While others talk, we are building. This isn't just technology, it's a revolution. And it's happening right now, powered by you. So thank you so much for joining me here on Beneficence TV and supporting our goals in open sourcing 0-point energy technology and disseminating all forms of forbidden knowledge.
Changing the system, treated like a toy. Ideas misunderstood, but brilliance is his boy. Benefactor.
This video was bang on brilliant stuff. I'll give it a shout out in my next video. I've forwarded it to Malcolm to check out too.
The viewers have spoken.
What an amazing documentary. Thanks for producing it.
Never seen this all tied together so well. Gonna share the heck out of it. Bravo and thank you.
Divine Science is officially a hit.
Amazing stuff, very nicely presented. New sub who can't consume your content quick enough. Great video, dude. Keep at it, you are doing the good work.
You did a great job putting this all together. It's a great overview, goes into amazing depth at times, so it's interesting for the larger swath of people. Well played, sir.
Okay, so I didn't sleep last night because I watched this 3 times and binged the rest of the channel. You have fantastic instincts for piecing concepts together. Almost every section was something I was already familiar with in a different context, and this documentary was the thread connecting them all.
Join us on a journey into a place of hidden knowledge. A place where science is stranger than fiction.
My fellow Americans, I want to talk to you about something that has been a topic of much debate and unfortunately too much misinformation. For decades, we've been told that our future depends on scarcity, that our energy needs are limited and must come from a select few sources, many of which are polluting and inefficient. But I'm here to tell you, it's time for us to rethink the very foundation of how we view energy. The idea of free energy devices has long been dismissed as fringe or in some cases outright conspiratorial. But it's important to recognize that this is not a new idea, nor is it a pipe dream. It's a scientific possibility that many credible thinkers, including Lieutenant Colonel Tom Bearden, have been trying to bring to light for years. You might not have heard about it in mainstream circles, but those who have looked into it, real scientists, real engineers, are showing us that we can tap into an energy source we've barely scratched the surface of. The vacuum. Yes, the vacuum of space itself, a limitless field of energy that, like Nikola Tesla once envisioned, could power our world without the need for fossil fuels, without the need for waste, without the need to pay for energy at all. It sounds like science fiction, but it's grounded in real, proven science. And yet, for far too long, it has been suppressed. This isn't just about new technology or gadgets. It's about a revolution, a true industrial revolution that could lift us into a future of abundance, a future where energy is not controlled by a few, but accessible to all. That's why I'm asking you to start rethinking what we've been told. We're no longer calling it free energy. We're calling it energy recycling, because that's what it is. It's harnessing the natural forces that are all around us and making them work for us. I know it may sound radical, but it's time we ask ourselves why this hasn't been part of the conversation until now. Why have those with the power to make a real change in our energy systems continued to push for scarcity instead of abundance? Why has this potential been buried in favor of systems that benefit a few at the expense of many? I believe it's time we change the narrative. We have the knowledge, we have the tools. This is not just about science. This is about our future. The energy revolution is here. It's time we embrace it. Thank you. God bless you. God bless America.
Alright, welcome back to part 2, everybody, where we're going to be diving into the practical guide to free energy devices. Give me a moment to situate myself and bring it up on the big screen. There we go. Alright. I'm also going to post another link in chat. It is available in the description of the video as well. Hey, Gerald. Great to have you here. Thank you, thank you. We're going to be diving into the Tesla Experiments chapter of the Practical Guide to Free Energy Devices. We have a follow-along, but I will try to, at my best, as putting it up on screen and scroll with my narration. So let's dive into it. In 1889... Oh, let me scroll down a little bit. So we're at the bottom of the page here. That's where it starts. It says, in 1889, Tesla began experimenting with capacitors charged to high voltages and discharged in very short time intervals. Again, this is the 2017 edition of the Practical Guide to Free Energy Devices. Conveniently, they left out the rodent coil chapter from the previous editions. But I digress. These very short pulses produced very sharp shock waves, which he felt across the front of his whole body. He was aware that closing a switch on a high-voltage dynamo often produced a stinging shock. This was believed to be static electricity, and it occurred only at switched on and only for a few milliseconds. However, in those few milliseconds, bluish needles of energy stand out from the electrical cables, and they leak to the ground, often through the bodies of any people standing nearby, causing immediate death if the installation is large enough. That sounds scary. Where are we? Okay, so let's scroll down a little bit for y'all. While the generators of that time were rated at some thousands of volts, these discharges were millions of volts in intensity. The generator problem was eliminated by the use of highly insulated switches, which were provided with very large ground connections. Tesla was intrigued by this phenomenon, which appeared to match the effect of his capacitor discharges. He calculated that the voltages produced were hundreds of times greater than could be supplied by the capacitor or generator. It was clear that the power supplied was being amplified or augmented in some way, but the question was, from where was the extra energy coming from? Tesla continued to investigate through his experiments, taking precautions against the high voltages being produced. He was soon able to produce these shock waves whenever he wanted to. The shock waves produced a stinging sensation no matter where he stood in his laboratory, and hands and face were particularly sensitive to this wave. These waves radiated out and penetrated metal, glass, and every other kind of material. This was clearly not an electromagnetic wave, so he called the new wave radiant electricity, what we now know as cold electricity. So Tesla searched the literature to find references to this radiant energy, but he could not find much. In 1842, Dr. Joseph Henry had observed that steel needles were magnetized by a Leyden jar spark discharge located on a different floor of the building. The magnetizing wave had passed through brick walls, oak doors, heavy stone, and iron flooring, and the tin ceiling to reach the needles located in a vault in the cellar. In 1872, Elihu Thomson took a large Ruhmkorff spark coil, attached one pole of the coil to a cold water pipe and the other pole to a metal table. This resulted in a series of massive sparks which electrified the metal doorknob of the room and produced a stinging shock wave which Tesla was investigating. He found that any insulated material object anywhere in the building would produce long continuous white sparks discharging to ground. This discovery was written up briefly in the Scientific American Journal later that year. Tesla concluded that all of the phenomena which he had observed implied the presence of a medium of gaseous structure that is one of consisting of independent carriers capable of free motion. Besides the air, another medium is present. This invisible medium is capable of carrying waves of energy through all substances, which suggests that if physical, its basic structure is much smaller than the atoms which make up the commonplace materials, allowing the stream of matter to pass freely through all solids. It appears that all of space is filled with this matter. Thomas Henry Moray demonstrated this energy flow passing through glass and lighting standard electric light bulbs. Harold Aspdin performed an experiment known as the Aspdin effect, which also indicates the presence of this medium. Harold made this discovery when running tests not related to the subject. He started an electric motor which had a rotor mass of 800 grams and recorded the fact that it took an energy input of 300 joules to bring it up to its running speed of 3,250 revolutions per minute when it was driving no load. The rotor having a mass of 800 grams and spinning at that speed, its kinetic energy together with that of the driving motor is no more than 15 joules, contrasting with the excessive energy of the 300 joules needed to get it rotating at that speed. If the motor is left running for 5 minutes or more, then switched off, it comes to rest after a few seconds. But the motor can then be started again in the same or opposite direction and brought to the speed with only 30 joules, provided that the time lapse between the stop and restarting is no more than a minute or so. If there is any delay or several minutes, then the energy input of 300 joules is needed to get the rotor spinning again. This is not a transient heating phenomenon. At all times, the bearing housing feel cool, and any heating in the drive motor would imply an increase of resistance and a buildup of power to higher steady state condition. The experimental evidence is that there is something unseen, which is put into motion by the machine rotor. That something has an effective mass density of 20 times that of the rotor, but it is something that can move independently and take several minutes to decay, while the motor comes to rest in a few seconds. Two machines of a different rotor size and composition reveal the phenomenon, and tests indicate variations with time of day and compass orientation of the spin axis. One machine, the one incorporating weaker magnets, showed evidence of gaining strength magnetically during the tests, which were repeated over a period of several days. This clearly shows that there is an unseen medium which interacts with everyday objects and actions, and confirms Tesla's discovery. Tesla continued to experiment and determined that a very short unidirectional pulse is necessary to generate the radiant energy wave. It reminds me of the Bedini motor. It's exactly what he uses. In other words, an alternating voltage does not create the effect. It has to be a DC pulse. Interesting. The shorter the pulse time and the higher the voltage, the greater the energy wave. He found that using a capacitor and an arc discharge mechanism with a very powerful permanent magnet placed at right angles to the spark improved the performance of his equipment by major factor. That is also interesting. Additional experiments showed that the effects were altered by adjusting the duration of the electrical pulse. In each instance, the power of the radiated energy appeared to be consistent, irrespective of the distance from his apparatus. The energy was in the form of individual longitudinal waves. Objects placed near the equipment became powerfully electrified, retaining their charge for many minutes after the equipment was switched off. This is also very interesting. Tesla was using a charging dynamo as a power source, and he found that if he moved his magnetic discharger to one side of the dynamo, the radiant wave was positive. If he moved the magnetic discharger towards the other side of the dynamo, the radiant wave became negative in sign. This was clearly a new electrical force, which traveled as light-like rays, showing them to be different in nature to electromagnetic waves of Maxwell. Investigating the effect of adjusting the duration of the pulses, Tesla found that the pulse train, which had individual pulses with durations exceeding 100 microseconds, produced pain and mechanical pressures. At this duration, objects in the field visibly vibrated and were even pushed along by the field. Thin wires subjected to sudden burst of the radiant field exploded into vapor. When the pulse duration was reduced to 100 microseconds or below, the painful effect was no longer felt and the waves were harmless. With a pulse duration of 1 microsecond, I lost my place there. There we go. With a pulse duration of 1 microsecond, strong physiological heat was felt. With even shorter pulse durations, spontaneous illuminations capable of filling rooms with white light were produced. Even shorter pulses produced cool, room-penetrating breezes, with an accompanying uplift in mood and awareness. These effects have been verified by Eric Dollard, who has written about them in some detail. In 1890, Tesla discovered that if he placed a 2-foot-long single-turn deep copper helix coil near his magnetic disruptor, the thin-walled coil developed a sheath of white sparks with long silvery white streams rising from the top of the coil. These discharges appeared to have much higher voltages than the generating circuit. This effect was greatly increased if the coil was placed inside the disruptor wire circle. The discharge seemed to hug the surface of the coil with a strange affinity and rode up its surface to the open end. The shock wave flowed over the coil at right angles to the winding and produced very long discharges from the top of the coil. With the disruptor charge jumping 1 inch in its magnetic housing, the coil's streamers were more than 2 feet in length. This effect was generated at the moment when the magnetic field quenched the spark, and it was wholly unknown at that time. This train of very short unidirectional pulses causes a very strange field to expand outward. This field resembles a stuttering electrostatic field, but has a far more powerful effect than would be expected from an electrostatic charge. Tesla was unable to account for this enormous voltage multiplication of his apparatus using any of the electrical formulas of his day. He therefore presumed that the effect was entirely due to radiant transformation rules, which would have to be determined through experimental measurements. This he proceeded to do. Tesla had discovered a new induction law where radiant shock waves actually auto-intensify when encountering segmented objects. The segmentation was the key to releasing the action. Radiant shock waves encountered a helix and flashed over the outer skin from end to end. The shock wave did not pass through the windings of the coil, but treated the surface of the coil as a transmission path. Measurements showed that the voltage increased along the surface of the coil was exactly proportional to the length traveled along the coil, with the voltage increase reaching values of 10,000 volts per inch of the coil. The 10,000 volts which he was feeding to his 24-inch coil were being magnified to 240,000 volts at the end of the coil. That's crazy. This was unheard of for simple equipment like that. Tesla also discovered that the voltage increase was mathematically linked to the resistance of the coil winding, with higher resistance winding producing higher voltages. All right, that's the end of page 75, chapter 5. We're going to move on to page 76. Second last paragraph. Yeah, I have to remember to scroll for you guys, because I'm my own producer. I ain't got nobody. All right. So it says Tesla then began to refer to his disruptor loop as his special primary, and to the long helical coil as his special secondary. But he never intended anyone to equate these terms to those referring to electromagnetic transformers, which operate in a completely different way. There was an attribute which baffled Tesla for a time. His measurements showed that there was no current flowing in the long copper secondary coil. Voltage was rising with every inch of the coil, but there was no current flowing in the coil itself. Tesla started to refer to his measurement results as his electrostatic induction law. He found that each coil had its own optimum pulse duration, and that these circuits driving it needed to be tuned to the coil by adjusting the length of the pulses to give the best performance. Sounds familiar. Sounds like what we're doing with the lightning thief. Tesla then noticed that the results given by his experiments paralleled the equations for dynamic gas movements, so he began wondering if the white flame discharges might be a gaseous manifestation of electrostatic force. He found that when a metal point was connected to the upper terminal of the secondary coil, the streamers were directly very much like water flowing through a pipe. Were directed very much like a water flowing through a pipe. When the stream was directed at distant metal plates, it produced electronic discharges which could be measured as current at the receiving site, but in transit, no current existed. This current only appeared when the stream was intercepted. Eric Dollard has stated that this intercepted current can reach several hundreds or even thousands of amps. That is also interesting. I'm trying to see if that's the right place for everybody to see the next paragraph. All right. I think that's right. So Tesla made another remarkable discovery. He connected a very heavy U-shaped copper bar directly across the primary of his disruptor, forming a dead short circuit. He then connected several ordinary incandescent filament bulbs between the legs of the U-shaped bar. When the equipment was powered up, the lamps lit with a brilliant, cold, white light. This is quite impossible with conventional electricity, and it shows clearly that what Tesla was dealing with was something new. This new energy is sometimes called cold electricity, and Edwin Gray demonstrated how different it is by lighting incandescent filament bulbs directly from his power tube, submerging them in water and putting his hand in the water. Sounds like something that you do, Gerald. You son of a bitch. You crazy son of a bitch. But cold electricity is generally considered to be harmless to humans. Ed Gray power tubes operated by generating radiant electricity waves by using a spark gap and collecting an energy using 3 encasing copper cylinders surrounding the spark gap. And this is what Mike from Faraday Research has often suggested to me is use a spark gap. I think, Gerald, you've also suggested that, use a spark gap. I'm going to look into getting one of those spark gaps that are kind of like encased in a tube, so it's not as dangerous in my tiny mini lab. Just trying to find my place. There we go. So the cylinders are drilled with many holes, as we're talking about Ed Gray's power tubes. The cylinders are drilled with many holes, as that enhances the pickup of the load. Enhances the pickup, and the load is driven directly from the current in the cylinders. When lighting the bulbs, Ed used an air cord transformer made of just a few turns and a very heavy wire. I personally am aware of 2 people who have independently reproduced Ed's power tube. I don't know who the author is here. We might find out at the end. It didn't say. Yeah, it might be written in the back of the jacket somewhere. But Tesla viewed the streamers coming off of his coil as being wasted energy. Yeah, see, that's exactly what we've been saying. Me and a lot of the other guys on the team who have been experimenting with coils and stuff. That discharge, that plasma arc and that stuff's coming off your coil, that's wasted potential. That's wasted energy. So Tesla viewed those streamers coming off the coil as wasted energy, so he tried to suppress them. Let me scroll down just a little bit. I think we're right here. Yep. He tried a conical coil, but found that this accentuated the problem. He then tried placing a copper sphere at the top of his coil. This stopped the streamers, but electrons were dislodged from the copper sphere, creating really dangerous conditions. This implied that the metals generate electron flow when struck by the coil streamers, as had been seen when the streamers had been aimed at remote metal plates and current was generated as a result. Tesla designed, built, and used large globe lamps which required only a single exterior plate for receiving the radiant energy. I'll try to zoom in here. There we go. No matter how far away these lamps were from the radiant source, they became brilliantly lit, almost to the level of an arc lamp and far, far brighter than any of the conventional Edison filament lamps. By adjusting the voltage and the pulse duration of his apparatus, Tesla could also heat or cool a room. Tesla's experiments also suggested that a method of extracting free energy is to use a Tesla coil, which has a metal spike instead of the more common metal spheres, at the end of the second coil. I think that's something similar to Nathan's setup. Nathan from Old Man Builds. He puts a copper tube or a copper wire down the throat of the Tesla coil as a pickup. But it's saying here specifically to use a Tesla coil which has a metal spike instead of the more common metal spheres at the end of the secondary coil. If the Tesla coil is fed with sufficiently short unidirectional pulses and the secondary coil pointed at a metal plate, then it should be possible to draw off serious levels of power from the metal plate, just as Tesla discovered. Interesting. I'm going to have to try that. This has been confirmed by Don Smith, who uses two metal plates separated by a layer of plastic dielectric, forming a capacitor. He states that a well-designed Tesla coil is capable of producing currents as high as the voltages, and he demonstrates a second plate in ground. I estimate that the spark produced would have to be thousands of volts at a significant current, which puts it in the kilowatt range, like most of Don's other devices. And there's a link for some of his devices. Mike says, only way is to capture with storage, but once the storage is full, energy will find a way to donate outside of storage. This is where current limitation comes in handy. Well, I'll keep that in mind. Back to the practical guide to free energy devices. We see a diagram here that they've so thoughtfully provided us. Trying to see if everybody can see that. Yeah, that looks good. All right, it says Don also points out that the positioning of the primary coil relative to the secondary coil of a Tesla coil determines the amount of current which can be provided. Contrary to Contrary to most opinion, it is possible to have Tesla coil current as high as the voltage. Don always stresses that you have the option of picking the electrical component, as conventional science has done, which leads to heat death, while the alternative option of selecting the magnetic component makes the world your oyster. With the magnetic ripple imposed on the zero-point energy field, which Don prefers to call the ambient background energy, you can make as many electric conversions as you wish, without depleting the magnetic event in any way. In other words, you can draw off serious amounts of current from capacitor plates positioned at the right angles to the magnetic flow. And every additional pair of plates gives you an additional source of major current without any need to increase the magnetic disturbance in any way. With his single metal plate, Tesla mentioned currents of 1,000 amps being available. Please remember that a Tesla coil produces seriously high voltage and is not a toy. It isn't. Great care is needed around Tesla coils, so when it is running, keep well away from it. I always only run it for a few seconds. I don't leave it on. That's very dangerous. Don also states that the collection and transfer of energy requires temporary storage, which occurs as the capacitors and the coils of a resonant circuit are cycled on and off. The frequency at which the capacitors and coils are pumped determines the amount of electrical energy that moves outward. The amount of energy transferred related directly to the density of lines the magnetic flux presents. Directly to the density of lines of magnetic flux present. The kinetic energy formula is helpful in establishing the amount of energy present. This formula points to mass multiplied by the square of the velocity. In the case of electrical energy, intensity of voltage in amperes multiplied by cycles per second. Replace velocity. Note that the acceleration of the voltage and the amperage increases in a nonlinear fashion as the law of squares applies, which each unit of increase causes a squaring of the flux lines present. In resonant air core coils, energy transfer, the increase in flux line present disturbs more electrons than previously, and this results in greater output energy than input energy being present and available. Oh, that was a mouthful. So there's a bunch of formulas at the bottom if anybody's interested. Moving on to the next page, the dampening process of conventional electrical power generation has all of the available electrons bouncing randomly, mostly canceling out each other, and so the useful energy available is only a very small percentage of the energy which is present. In a resonant induction system, a very high percentage of the energy present is useful. When resonating, ohm's impedance Z becomes 0, and all the energy present becomes available, without being degraded in any way. Ohms is load or wasted energy, and amperes is the rate of that wasting. Interesting. That's an interesting way of looking at it. Ohms is the load or wasted energy, and amperes is the rate of that wasting of energy. Now apply this information to the air core coil resonant transformer energy system. That's kind of like the, that's basically what we have with the rodent coil, the vortex coil. It's an air coil. It's an air core coil. It has no core. It says L1 and L2 coils are now present. L1 has fewer turns, and it is several times the diameter of L2. Input from a 12 voltage gel cell high voltage laser module produces 8,000 volts with low wasted energy amperage into 4 turns of coil L1. Each turn of L1 then acquires 2,000 volts of resonant potential. Each turn of L2 is then exposed to an electric flux of 2,000 volts. Each turn at the bottom end of L2 acquires 2,000 volts. The flux lines are squared in the additive as the voltage and amperage progress towards the top end of L2's many turns. We have a diagram below. I'll show you guys in a minute. Actually, I'll just put that on now. A huge number of flux lines which were not previously present occur at the top end of L2. These flux lines excite the electrons nearby in its earth and air and groundings. This high level of excitement above the ambient causes a large number of electrons to become available, electrons which previously were not part of the energy present. At this point, large amounts of excess energy is present. The CLP is greater than 1. Device produces energy at ratio frequencies in the megahertz range, and this allows it to be small in size and yet produce large amounts of energy. The megawatt size unit will sit comfortably on a breakfast table. The energy is charged to direct current and then to the desired working frequency. The energy powering these devices is drawn from the surrounding energy field and is not conventional electricity, and it does not flow through the wires of a secondary coil, but instead it runs along the outside of the coil and through space to strike the surface of the metal plates, where it generates conventional electrical current. Thomas Henry Moray demonstrated that this energy flows along the outside of the wire, can pass through glass without being affected in any way. That's insane. While Tesla's experiment used a metal plate, he patented a coil type which he said is very effective in picking up this radiant energy. And that is the pancake coil. We'll show you in a second below. I'm sure most of you know what the pancake coil design looks like, though. And I have to note that the rodent coil, the vortex coil designs are actually an extension of the pancake coil that Tesla patented. So it says, while this pancake coil type goes by the rather impressive name of bifilar serial connected coil, which despite its impressive name is not difficult to wind using two separate strands of wire as shown here. It really isn't difficult to make a pancake coil. If a strong magnetic field is positioned across the spark gap as shown above, it can sharpen the cutoff of the spark and enhance the unidirectional character of the pulse of current. It should be remembered that if a very short, sharp pulse of unidirectional current, such as is produced by a spark jumping across a spark gap, as in the arrangement shown above, occurs in a conductor, then a strong wave of radiant energy radiates out in a plane at right angles to the pulse of current. This radiant energy wave is quite different from the electromagnetic field generated around the wire, carrying the pulse of current. In the Tesla coil arrangement shown above, it should be possible to gather additional free energy through one or more coaxial, like layers of an onion, cylindrical coils around the spark gap leads. These coils will work better if they are wound as bifilar, serially connected coils. The reason for this is that the self-induction of the coil can be zero at any particular frequency, because a Tesla pancake or cylindrical coil can act as a resonant coil at one particular frequency. This effect is because the capacitance between the adjacent turns of the coil is dramatically altered by the raised voltage difference produced by the winding method, and as a result, the combined capacitance of all the turns along the coil's self-inductance gives a result where the coil appears to have just magnetic and resistance characteristics and no self-inductance at all, as pointed out in Tesla's patent. Tesla was granted a U.S. patent for the apparatus of the utilization of radiant energy. Wow. In which he shows various ways of handling the energy collected by the metal plates. Try to zoom in here for me. My eyes aren't what they used to be. All right. So he filed a patent called the Apparatus for the Utilization of Radiant Energy, in which he shows various ways of handling the energy collected by the metal plate. It is likely that the pickup technique shown in the patent of Herman Polston, which is in the appendix, would also work very effectively with this collected energy. Old patents sometimes mention a condenser, which is the original term for what is nowadays called a capacitor. After careful consideration and many experiments, Tesla concluded that the radiant rays which he was utilizing radiated out so rapidly that electrons were unable to keep up with them. The rays were being carried via a... let me fix that. The rays were being carried via a medium consisting of an extremely mobile, almost massless particles, very much smaller than electrons, and which, because of their size and speed, could pass easily through most materials. In spite of their small size, their extreme speed caused them to have considerable momentum, a fact which is very difficult to come to terms with. A fact that is very difficult to come to terms with is that these rays seem to propagate outward instantly with no time delay at all, as if transmitted through matter which is wholly incompressible. It is sometimes called radiant energy, or RE for short, and appears to have no net charge in conventional terms. This is a unique feature of the universe, with unique characteristics, which, if utilized, provides a whole host of new applications and capabilities. Tesla considered that this newly discovered field acts like a fluid. 115 years later, the cover story of the December 2005 edition of the Scientific American journal states that the experimental modules hint that space-time could be a kind of fluid. It has taken a long time for modern scientists to start catching up with Tesla. In actual fact, it was Michael Faraday who came up with the idea in the first place. And that is our chapter on Tesla's experiments in the Practical Guide to Free Energy Devices 2017 edition. Again, if you want to read all this and go over the diagrams present, the link is in the description and in chat. It was a pleasure hosting this podcast for you tonight. I will be back for Mike Faraday's show tonight, hopefully be on for maybe an hour. Until next time, share and subscribe, everybody.
Talking about 0 point, the points lost on them. Kevin structures crumbling from the same old stems. They laugh like I'm crazy, but I see it all so clear. Exploited labor on net, injustice burning ears. Fighting for a change in this wasteland of noise. But they call me foolish while I teach young boys. Benefactor boy, dreaming about the world begin to play. Changing the system, I'm treated like a toy. Ideas misunderstood, but brains is exploited. Benefactor boy, can't you hear his voice? Benefactor boy, keep fighting the fights, chasing revolutions in the darkest nights. A dreamer with vision beneath the laughter and noise. A future so bright, waiting for the right choice. Benefactor boy, dreaming about the world he can't deploy. Changing the system, but treated like a toy. Ideas misunderstood, but brains is his boy. Benefactor boy, can't you hear his voice?
Lights and gravity converge, yeah, guiding voices, revelations start. Ancient whispers call, they're begging us to open our eyes. We stand tall, defying all their lies. Even in now, we're shattering the silence. Feel the power, revelations on the rise. Forbidden knowledge we dare to see, unveiling secrets, setting minds free. In this epic, we play our part with fearless hearts. In and now, we're shattering the silence. Feel the power, revelations on the rise.